Welcome back to Are We Fucked, the podcast that asks the big questions, terrifying ones, so you don't have to. I am Lisa Camillo, anthropologist, filmmaker, and your slightly panicked but still stylish tour guide through the apocalypse. Today, we're diving into an industry that's basically the mafia in a different font. Fashion. You love it, you wear it, and surprise! Probably killing you. Joining me in this brilliant, stylish, and probably the only person who can make graphite sound sexy, Matteo Ward. Matteo is the CEO and co-founder of RAD, a brand that's more of a manifesto than a clothing line. His mission? To expose the real cost of fashion, not just on your wallet, but on people and the planet. He's also the host of Junk, a Sky Italy docuseries that takes you on a global tour of fast fashion's dirty little secrets. From Ghana to Chile to Indonesia, where our cheap, disposable clothes go to die. In this episode, we'll uncover how the global north is treating the global south like a dumpster for its fast fashion garbage, how your clothes might actually be poisoning you. Yep, fun fact, fashion and healthcare are way more connected than you think. And the diabolical origins of planned obsolescence. Who decided everything you own should fall apart on purpose? If you ever wonder how to layer your clothing without it trying to kill you, we've got you covered, literally. So buckle up, fashion victims, because Matteo Ward is about to blow your sustainable sourced, organically dyed socks off. Let's go! Matteo, come stai? Before everybody turns off the episode, you're not in the wrong podcast, you're in the right podcast. So we are here with Matteo Ward. Tell me your connection, first of all, with Italy, because you're in Italian TV and yeah, tell me about that.
I thought I was going crazy because you started in Italian. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, I thought you look very confused. Like, are we doing this in Italian now?
All right. So, no, I'm half Italian. My mom is Italian and my father is American. So, I was born and raised in Italy, spent a lot of time growing up in the States in Seattle. So, I'm a hybrid.
Like me, we're twinsies because we're very similar. I was born in Rome, grew up here, and then spent 20 years in Australia because my dad is Australian, my mom Italian, and back and forth with that. So very similar.
I don't know about you. I didn't realize how lucky I was up until like the age of 15 or 16 when you start realizing, okay, my upbringing is probably not normal. And
Yeah.
it's been a precious childhood, I have to say.
Where did you grow up in Italy?
The city near Venice in the northeast of Italy, which is a textile district hub. It's very famous for luxury clothing manufacturing and accessories.
That's the connection. Okay, let's get on to it.
Wow.
We fucked Matteo, fashion-wise.
Oh gosh, facts point in that direction. Yes, we are fucked, but I always look at the positive. I call myself rational optimistic. I think
Hmm.
the status quo is not great
Mm.
in that sense, though we can still redesign to revolutionize the way clothes are made, produced, and communicated. And most of all, there's still a lot of beauty in this world that's worth fighting for. And that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps our team going. No matter how challenging the status quo is, how big the problem is, we believe and we know there is a way to move forward.
Great. Okay, that's hopeful. Good. We're very happy to hear that because our guests are not being that optimistic so far. But I would like to know more about your experience, what you've seen. I'm sure you've seen some pretty fucked up shit. Chile, Bangladesh. Tell us the conditions. Oh my God, my cat just jumped in.
I know. I saw it.
She's very naughty. Oh God. Sorry, everyone. Tell me your experience. I'm really, really keen to know what you've seen, how bad it is out there, because a lot of young kids that buy these clothes, and including myself in the past, now I'm trying to be more conscious, but at the time, I didn't know how bad it was.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I've been working in the fashion industry for many, many years. That's all I've ever known. I actually wanted to be a politician growing up to have an impact on people, but then I ended up working in the fashion industry. But it wasn't until 2 years ago that I started traveling around the world to see firsthand what is the dramatic environmental and social impact of fashion. What is the true status quo? What does it look like to live in one of these countries that every single day, every single activist for sustainable fashion mentions as the example of a system that's broken. And it has been a life-changing experience, obviously. And it sounds like rhetoric, but it's not. I chose specific countries because I knew what I wanted to see. But
Mm.
up until you get there, you don't really know. It's very hard, even for someone like me that has been doing this job, your daily life of someone who literally has to open the door and walk through mountains of, for example, discarded textile clothes from the northern part of the world. Let's start from here, Ghana, a country that it's in a sort of like whimsical joke, but the destiny of Ghana is a tragedy itself because
Mm.
400 years ago, from the shores of Ghana, we started to send off millions of people that were enslaved in cotton fields in the United States of America, for
Yeah,
example.
sure.
Today, those same shores don't export humans anymore, but they import the byproduct of the system that those people were forced, unfortunately, overconsumption and overproduction on a daily basis from the northern part of the world. And just to give you a number, I'm talking about 15 million garments a week.
They bring back that they haven't sold? Is that what it is?
In our world, up here in Europe, in the United States, we tend to consider clothing as disposable goods because they're so cheap that people just buy a lot of them and then just throw them away. What happens after we throw them away? It's something that's often unseen because we don't have the technologies nor the infrastructures to actually sort, upcycle, recycle, or properly downcycle in an effective way all of these clothes at scale. So, what the northern part of the world has come up with is a system where the majority of this clothing is shipped off to the southern part of the world in countries like Ghana.
It's disgusting.
And Ghana receives 15 million garments a week.
That's insane.
Yeah, I was reading the statistics and I was like, I need to go to Ghana to see them with my own eyes. But I did not expect to see what I saw. I didn't even know what 15 million garments a week
Yeah.
looked like.
It's hard to
you know?
comprehend.
Yeah. But I'll share it. I found the entire beaches completely covered in clothing. You know, the cliffs, like you've probably seen like the beautiful images of the cliffs in Ireland or, high on the coast. The same thing, but made of clothes, one layer after the other. And people and animals have to live on top of these cliffs made of these colored clothes. There's a new generation of children that hasn't even seen the color of the sand or the earth underneath the layers of wasted clothes because there's no more space.
That's unbelievable.
So when you look at this, you're like, are we fucked?
Yeah.
How did we create such a system that transforms the planet into a landfill
Yeah.
just because we are hyper consuming stuff that we don't need, that our earth is not able to absorb, that can take hundreds of years to degrade, and that it's making us poorer and more unhealthy, and that's causing more social inequality? It's irrational.
It's dystopian.
It's the reality of countries like Ghana. It's the reality of countries like communities in Chile. I've been in South America. It's the reality for people in Kenya. And my trip continued along this need to discover the truth, the narrate through the experiences that every day are already facing the dramatic impact of hyperproduction, hyperconsumption of clothing in their own lives. Whether it's chemical pollution, whether it's abundance of textile waste like in Ghana, whether it's the fact that there's no alternative industry, so people have to work in these textile prisons forever, just like in Bangladesh, whether it's in India, where we have in the past couple hundred years, so much from natural fiber like cotton that we transform cotton in some sort of artificial polluter itself that's killing hundreds of thousands, according to statistics, because of the chemicals used to grow the crop and the cycle into which farmers fall to be able to afford all of the chemicals needed to continue to grow the crop. It's insane.
We never think of cotton as bad. We think, oh, yeah, I'll do cotton because at least it's going to be the healthier, most environmentally friendly. So you're telling me now that even that one now, it's not great. So we're going to be covered in leaves now.
I think the way we treat cotton is not great. Cotton is nature. Nature is always has its purpose, has a sense and a meaning. But the moment man started asking cotton and natural performances, that's when we started to compromise the properties and the function of this fiber.
Yeah, interesting. So we have the landfills, the issue with fast fashion. We have human rights. So you've seen also terrible conditions of employment, right, in these places. I bet also Bangladesh will have terrible conditions. I see even Shane, and people can't
Yeah.
even go to the bathroom, and really incredibly long hours, poor conditions.
Yeah. And the two things are interconnected. I'll give you an example. I was in Bangladesh. I was walking down this path with our guide, local journalist, and he was telling me that, all of the textile factories that we had on the left-hand side of our road were highly certified, very responsible. They had everything in place to mitigate the environmental impact of clothing production. You had hectares of fields covered in layers of textile waste, water that's pitch black and polluted, and you
Wow.
could see the dyes coming out of the factories going straight into these fields. So the natural question was, hold on, what am I missing?
Yeah.
Right? You don't pay them enough. They're never going to have the money to turn on the filters to clean the waters. So the factories have the filters. But the
Mm,
fact that we wanted to pay so little
yeah.
for a pair of jeans or a t-shirt, de facto made ecological compromise inevitable. So
Mm.
this is the interlink, the interdependence between social justice and environmental justice is at the core of our research, and it's at the core of our trips, because you cannot change what you can't see if we want to move forward. If we want to make sure that when we do this podcast again next year, and you ask me the same questions that we fucked, and I tell you, no, we're not fucked. We're actually moving forward. So if we want to do this,
Mm.
we have to be able to mitigate not the symptoms of the disease, but the origin of the disease and the
Yeah.
origin of social injustice.
Yeah. Capitalism, how it works, making the middleman fatter and fatter instead of
Yeah.
paying people properly.
And this is the grounding principle of the industry itself, capitalism and fashion. The Industrial Revolution is the fashion revolution. And,
Mm.
and, and clearly, everything started because someone in the United States invented a machine that was able to extract cotton in a faster, better, more efficient way. And someone in the United Kingdom invented the mechanical loom. And those two things combined made the Industrial Revolution. Now, in order to start operating these machines and these new technologies, that's obviously the world needed humans. In order to make profit, you needed to pay very little for such human capital. So political wisdom back then enabled, unfortunately, the exploitation of people. Because in 1791, an American politician, Alexander Hamilton, went up to the US Congress and was faced with a question, wanted to make a plan to help America become great. Not great again,
Yeah.
just great.
Yeah, let's not go there.
1791, Alexander Hamilton goes to Congress and he actually told everybody, this is written down in the document, the only way to make America great is to invest in the textile industry. And the only
Ah,
way to make the textile industry profitable is to use three things that we have in abundance: water, women, and children. This was
oh,
written down in a
wow.
political document. So these social injustice in the fashion industry is not something that started with H&M or Zara 20 years ago.
They embedded in the industry.
It's injected in the DNA of the industry.
Wow.
Absolutely. I often say the unsustainability of the fashion system is not the result of a broken system. It is the system.
Mm,
That's why there's a difference in fashion industry and fashion.
yeah.
They're two different things. They're often today put together on the same level. But one is a cultural industry that can create economic value, social value, environmental value. The other, it's a financial industry that exploits society, the environment in order to create
Mm,
profit.
yeah. Wow.
This is live and casual, right? So if I stand up to charge my iPad, which is dying,
Totally.
it's okay. And you'll get a fun tour of the office as well.
Nice. I like your office a lot.
And there you go. Where is my charger? This is a funny question. Oh, right there. Great. It was right here all the time.
I love those pictures on the wall.
Oh, these are some of our first campaigns. When we first founded the company I run today as an educational movement, we enrolled a lot of people around Europe to become part of we call it our army for good. And it was 2015. A lot of these people became ambassadors in our educational programs.
Amazing. I know of your books and series, but I don't know about you have also a label, right?
Yeah, it's more than a label. So we're a design studio and we have a label. I had to start a label in 2017 because people did not believe or understand. I didn't understand what we were doing. So briefly to explain, we have 3 units in our company. We have an educational unit, which works pro bono all over the world, providing sustainability workshops to students age 4 to 10 in collaboration with the FAO, and age 15 to 8 by ourselves. That's how we started.
Amazing.
Then we have an innovative startup and R&D. So we conduct research and development on new technologies and processes to mitigate the impact of clothing and maximize the social impact of the industry. Now, the innovative startup went bankrupt pretty much in 2017 because we had co-developed a patented technology to mineral dye garments with graphite that was recycled.
Graphite?
Yeah,
Ah.
the stuff you find in
Yeah.
pencils.
I was thinking, is
Yeah.
that what I'm thinking of?
Oh, this is a graphite stone. So
Mm,
we started recycling graphite to mineral dye garments because province I'm from in Italy is highly contaminated by chemicals that are used in the textile industry. And I was
really?
looking for, yeah,
I didn't know that. Wow.
yeah. And I was looking for alternatives for the processing and dyeing of clothing. And I stumbled across a pencil maker that used recycled graphite to create pencils from my same province. And the pencil's name is Perpetua. And it's a funny story because Perpetua inspired us to create a new technology for textiles using the same graphite that was used to make the pencil as a dye stuff for textiles. And that's how we started. So my initial idea was to license this technology to brands because it was highly, responsible for multiple levels.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was that it was either too expensive or we're not communicating it in the right way. Whatever it was, a combination, nobody wanted it.
Yeah.
So I had to create my own label and I started designing t-shirts, mineral dye with recycled graphite so that I could show potential clients that it was possible to create something that people would want, even if it was made in the higher quality supply chains of Italy, and they didn't believe that people would want to pay such a premium
Yeah.
for a new innovative product. We proved them wrong.
Fantastic. So, and where are you at with that? Have you developed more on that side of the fashion?
We continued the R&D through the years. I have a very functional idea of fashion design. So I like to create in response to a need. And there's a lot of need that the fashion industry is now addressing. And it's just a matter of listening sometimes. So to give an example, our R&D project expanded into healthcare. In 2019, I was walking through a hospital in Vicenza, Italy, and I discovered that 70% of deaths in the intensive care unit for premature babies were caused by bacteria infections. What concerned me the most, though, is that after I saw what the kids were wearing, it was obvious that a major contributor to bacteria infection was also the fact that they were wearing fibers that are actually some of bacteria's favorites because they increase bacterial proliferation.
Crazy. That's insane.
Yeah, the doctors didn't know. Well, I didn't know about the medical part of it, and doctors didn't know about the textile part of it. When you get out of your industry and start listening to what's going on around it, then you can
Yeah.
find functions and address needs, even through fashion, that may be unheard of, and you can contribute to solving stuff. So after that discovery, we created a small capsule collection for premature babies made with fabrics that reduce bacterial proliferation, or research and development program in collaboration with a company called TM Project and with our fantastic textile in Tuscany, Walter Corriga. I always love to mention our partners. We wouldn't have been able to do anything without the collaboration of these great supply chain operators, people that ultimately believed in our crazy ideas and helped us in reality.
Amazing. Well done to them too. Wow. Okay, so because more and more now, especially in of course, is catching up now, but it's already been a conversation about Shane and how toxic the material is for wearing, because you talked about the baby's clothing and how toxic it was. But they
Yeah.
found now some really nasty chemicals in Shane's shoes and materials that you wear, and that seeps into the skin. and can really cause some really serious problems. So have you seen much about that and dealing also with adult clothing?
Yeah. Have you ever, I mean, I'm not sure. Let me ask you, do you have any friends or maybe yourself as well? Do you have any skin allergies or dermatitis or eczema?
I have people I know. I'm pretty lucky, but I have people I know.
Yeah, same here. So there's been a spike, an increase in that. It's called in Italian dermatitis, and it's
Yeah,
linked to a
right.
lot of the dyes
Wow.
used in the textiles. You cannot make a generalization. You can't just say black is always bad
Mm-hmm.
and white is always good. There's a higher chance that if there's an unaccounted supply chain in countries that are at risk, where they have to adopt very cheap processes,
Mm-hmm.
specific fibers and specific colors may be using substances that are toxic to our health. Some of the worst could be synthetic fibers that are dyed with very bright or solid colors like
Mm-hmm.
black, blue, yellow, red, or leather, heavy metals. I've seen it with my own eyes. I was in Bangladesh and I've seen, unfortunately, in some canneries around Dhaka, there's a district specialized in leather. And I've seen with my own eyes kids working in these big tubs full of all of the metals, all of the chemicals that are used to
Oh no.
soften up the leather. Yep. They aren't aware
That's awful.
of the risks.
That's criminal.
It's criminal. It is criminal in most countries. But the fact that we don't control our supply chains
Mm.
and the fact that we're not paying our supply chains enough, the fact that we want to always have the cheapest product possible, leave room for such tragedies and leave room for products that end up on the market and could be highly risky even for users.
Yeah.
The people we should be most concerned of is children.
Mm.
You know, I don't know if you have family, if you have children, if you're friends with children, but everybody, it's kind of like part of our culture. Like we know that children's skin is more sensitive, so you never put them in the sun,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
But we never think about the consequences of exposing children to clothing that may be unhealthy for them.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous because our skin doesn't mature and doesn't develop a natural ability to protect itself until the age of 12.
What right. Wow. Okay.
And our
Mm.
skin absorbs. Every time we sweat, and children usually sweat more,
Yeah.
the water that comes out of our pores can mix up with the dyes.
Mm.
Simplify it as much as possible, but they can mix up with the dyes and the fabric, and all of that stuff can be reabsorbed by our body.
Nasty.
The first experiment was conducted in the 70s in the United States of America. They took two samples of children, was wearing regular cotton pajamas. Another one was wearing pajamas that contained flame retardant because of synthetic fibers. Now, the next morning, they found in the urines of the children the flame retardants that were contained in the pajamas
No
that had
way.
the
Wow.
fibers. Yeah.
That was quick.
I mean, I could go on and on and on about talking about this, but I think the moral of the story is we got to be careful about what we wear. We got to look at clothes with the same eyes that we look at food. I know it's hard because it's not a rational buy most of the times; it's an emotional buy.
Yeah.
However, if we consider the health aspect of it, if we consider that our skin is an organ, our skin absorbs, our skin breathes, and it is the only filter we have with the external world, we will probably be more conscious and careful about what we put on our skin, just as much as we put, a lot of care and thought about what we put in our body through our food. It's important to think about what we put on our body through textiles.
Yeah, we think that the problem is just going to stay in the countries that these fabrics are produced. And if you don't care about them, at least care about yourself. Because if you care about yourself, that means you care also for others, because we need to extend that care for the rest, because nothing stays where it stays. We are in one world, and what goes around comes around, right?
Totally. But sometimes, and I've seen this, care is a luxury not everybody can afford.
Yeah.
The women in Bangladesh, the farmers in India, the people in Ghana, they would love to be able to afford caring for themselves and others.
Yeah.
But most of the times they're on survival mode,
Yeah.
hand to mouth. They have to do what it takes to survive. And if that means having to use or exposing yourself and others to dangerous chemicals, do they have? Do they have an alternative? The alternative is to starve.
Yeah.
In Bangladesh, there's no alternative industry. That's what they can do. I mean, it's either do that or you're on the street.
It's very sad.
That's why it starts with us.
Yeah.
We can change that. And I didn't do that.
Don't know what that was. Never seen that before. I'm glad somebody's approving anyway. Whoever that is spying on us. Okay, great. Always knew the CIA is probably
Well,
listening to my podcast. Oh, Meloni ready to imprison me. Ah, fun.
well, speaking about Meloni, a lot of work in politics because if somebody can break the system and work to put people on the other side of the world, it starts with us. It starts with due diligence and it starts with laws that make it mandatory for brands to pay living wages to people on the other side of the world. Because just as you said, we're one world and the same rules and the rights that we recognize to workers in Italy and the European Union, we have to be able to recognize them to workers and people in Bangladesh, in India, in Ghana, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in Cambodia, in Vietnam,
Yeah.
in every other country in the world.
So, where are we at with those regulations and laws in Europe, in the US, and around the world? Where are we with things? Are we improving that? Are we far from it or getting somewhere?
No, we're not fucked in Europe. But it's slow. Has been a slow evolution and a slow adoption of, a new legislative mindset towards the fashion industry. However, it is in progress, and I'm happy to say that I'm quite happy with what the European Union has done in the past years. Now, happy doesn't mean I'm like, oh, we're awesome, we're great. No, the
Yeah.
European Union has done and will continue, but it is by far the most advanced example of trying to regulate, having a regulatory approach.
Great. Okay. Let's now shame shame Shane. Apart from Shane, who else is terrible out there so our listeners can look out? Can you give names?
It's hard to give names, meaning the obvious villains are, the Shays, the Teamers, but I'm never a fan of putting someone on the spot for being the bad guy, putting someone on the spot for being the good guy. You go case by case and you see where brands are at in terms with respect to specific goals and parameters. So for climate change, then, well, great. There's a new actually fashion revolution report called asks the question, who is fueling up the fashion industry and who is actually making great progress towards the defossilization of clothing and deep supply chains. And there's a chart there that shows based on data that's publicly available, who's doing better, who's doing worse. It's hard to make an analysis and a report, an evaluation, a scoring, let's call it like a chart of brands when you don't have standard definitions,
Yeah,
standard
sure.
methodologies to, hold them accountable for.
Like, for example, overall,
Yeah.
Zara, blink if they're bad. Or if there's, if, because, oh God, because, they have this greenwashing.
Okay, let me tell you. On my social media channel, I often criticize Inditex Group, H&M, Shane, Temu, Nike.
Hmm.
Oh, Nike. Just a couple of days ago, their annual meeting in Oregon, they have decided to not approve a request by its own investors to revise the policies for due diligence in the supply chain and adopt legally binding agreements to make sure that the workers in countries at risk are actually supported and managed in a way that social justice can actually become a word that's real. Now, why have they refused? We know probably the answer. We'll never know.
Profits.
But, you know, it's 2024. For God's sake, how, how, how are we still making these irrational decisions, especially in spite of the fact that the policies that Nike's right now adopts for due diligence in the supply chain have proven ineffective, unsuccessful. We have had a multitude of scandals in the past couple of years about Nike garment workers not being paid, wage theft, health risks in the supply chains, living wages not being addressed. I mean,
Yeah.
how
Nasty.
are we, if your own policies are not working, if we have a problem, why are we sticking to those policies? What are we thinking that they're just going to
Yeah.
get better? That your policies will actually start working? If they haven't worked, let's move on. You have your
Yeah.
own investors calling for these changes. Why are we not listening? So as you see, anyone can fall on my radar. I think any activist that's listening. And if Nike does something well tomorrow, I'll be the first one to congratulate them on that. I think it's important to raise that awareness about the
Yeah.
problems because you cannot change what you can't see. And it's equally as important to support the good steps that a lot of brands are doing for the transition because they need that support, even though the bigger elephant in the room is hyper production and hyper consumption. And
Yeah.
no brand has yet really come forward with a strategy that I think it's working. I mean, brands are skilled. There are a lot of cool little, brands, incredible work in this field. I'm talking about big brands, like the big names, like those guys, they still have a huge problem with volumes and they're not being transparent about how much products they produce.
Because that's the thing. Also, what is not sold is overproduced, and what is not sold is just ends in landfills. It's not even marked down so people can still use it. They just throw it out. It's disgusting.
Well,
It doesn't make sense.
we have 100 million garments being produced every single year. More than that. There's 8 billion people on this planet.
Yeah.
It's like we're designing waste. It's planned obsolescence. And historical fun fact for you, before we told the story about Alexander Hamilton in 1791,
I like history.
1678. Hyperproduction and hyperconsumption is not, again, a decision that fast fashion brands made in the past 20 years. It is foundational to the industry we know. 1678, there was a man in France who wanted to become one of the most influential and richest men in the world. His name was King Louis XIV. King Louis had a dream. He wanted to become better and greater than Spain and Portugal. And his finance minister, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, who is, to me, the first CFO of the fashion system. It wasn't an industry yet, so it was a system. Invented planned obsolescence. He told King Louis XIV that it was probably worth exploring the idea of forcing people into changing their wardrobes at least twice a year. So people would throw away what they had and buy new clothes.
Wow. Okay.
And in 1678, people in Paris woke up one morning. They didn't scroll Instagram. They opened a magazine called Matteo Ward, and they discovered that all of a sudden what they were wearing was out of fashion because the king had decided that people had to change twice a year. Fashion seasons,
Wow.
spring, summer, and winter. That's what he called them. Planned obsolescences and fashion trends are the first pillar of the system we know today. And it's actually the fun fact that gives the title to my book. Fuori moda in Italian is out of fashion. That's, where the book starts.
I love that. I can't wait to read your book. It really is super cool. I love history because it's crazy because I really hate that every year there is a new female heel that changes in style and your old shoes are out of fashion. The same as with pants. First skinny jeans and then, oh no, that's out of fashion. Now you need the flare jeans. Yes, just like, okay, you really are trying to force us every year to change clothes, or sometimes every season, really. It's insane, and we can't keep it up. The world can't keep up. And I'm really glad that you are speaking out and you are showing the world. You have a series called Junk, right, in Italian TV. Congratulations on that. And it's amazing that you're showing everyone what the dirty secrets of the fashion industry. It's very important. And you're linking that with educating younger generations. So kudos to you. I'm very proud of what you're doing, Matteo.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliments and there's so much to do. So when people say congratulations on what you're doing on sustainability, I'm like, well, I'll take this as a new starting point. I'll take it. Thank you so much. Always happy to accept the compliment, not as something that I should pat myself in the back with, but as more motivation to do more and more and more. Education is one thing. As you said, it's very important to raise awareness because you cannot change what you can't see. And sometimes it's the starting point. It's a longer term process. So we started working in schools, as I told you, like in 2015. Now, I think this is the first year I'm actually starting to see the return on that investment, where I see people with brains 10 years ago in some working for brands, working in sustainability teams for brands, or doing any other job, but with a different mentality. So it's quite interesting. Politics is the second lever. Like we need to work with politicians, educate
Yeah,
them because they can actually change things in a faster way. If someone tells you to stop when the traffic light is red, you'll have to stop or you'll get sanctioned. That's
exactly. Yeah.
that's the approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the last tip for our listeners in
Yeah,
terms of fabrics. So the worst is polyester. Yeah, confirmed. Blink if
depends.
it is.
No. I'm always very transparent. The true answer is it depends. That's why the industry is very complicated. What product are you talking about? If you're talking about underwear, yes, it's one of the worst. If you're talking about ski wear, maybe it's good.
Ah, okay, yeah, in that way. But normal everyday clothing, for example, just dresses and shirts, it's terrible. It's not good. It's not breathable, and it ends up in landfill. You can't really recycle, can you? You can't recycle it at all?
You can recycle it. So polyester can be recycled. However, you're right, doesn't degrade. So it can take up to hundreds of years to degrade. So I'm not a fan of synthetic fibers. I'm not a fan of the abuse of synthetic fibers in clothing. So my rule of thumb is for first layers, everything that goes on your skin, choose or prioritize natural fibers.
Yeah,
Think about it this way. Your skin is eating something. Would you eat something that's made out of plastic or would you eat something that comes from nature?
yeah, that's pretty simple. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So that's a simple way to look at it. Obviously, this doesn't mean that all natural fibers are great. They can be dyed, treated, grown in ways that are absolutely unsustainable. So we have to be careful even when we choose natural fibers. But it's the same thing that happens when you go to the supermarket. You know that apples are better than gummy bears, right?
Yeah,
However, that doesn't mean that all apples are great. You also have to be able to understand which apples are better, which apples are grown in good.
good point. Very good point. And how about hemp?
I love hemp. It's one of my
Great.
favorite
Okay.
fibers.
We got a winner. We got a winner, everyone. Nice.
I love hemp. My favorite hemp comes from northern France. It's beautiful. I have to send you a sample. It's so soft. And actually, here in Italy, in Bergamo, there's a factory, one of the most ancient mills we have in the world, and it still operates with machines made out of wood, and they only work with hemp. And it's incredible.
Oh, that's very cool. The thing is that in Italy, they just banned any cannabis products. So hemp is part of that, right? Is it?
Well, now no. So there's the cannabis that has the properties that make you want to smoke it. It's different from the cannabis that's used.
So a different strain, a different. So you can smoke your hemp t-shirt.
Cannot smoke, don't try. So actually, there's been a revamp. Italy had a lot of hemp fields up until the 60s. Then the legislations, unfortunately, they banned all hemp and cannabis products, and that drove hemp out of market. Now it's back. I have a
Great.
friend of mine that actually in Vicenza even has its own hemp farm.
Very
For
cool.
textile, not for smoke.
Okay. Not anymore, at least anyway. Well, Matteo, that was very fun, amazing, and you were great. And congratulations on all your work. And very proud of what you're doing for the fashion industry. And yeah, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for the invite. Congrats to you. Great podcast. I hope the outcome of each series is not fucked. Yes, the situation is critical. It's important to be conscious about how critical the situation is, but it's more important to also have hope, a plan, and a strategy to move forward. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Amen, brother. Thank you. Thanks,
Ciao.
everyone.
Ciao.
Ciao. And that's a wrap. Huge thanks to Matteo Ward for joining us today and making us all regret every fast fashion purchase we've ever made. Thanks, buddy. If you want to learn more about RAD and how to detox your wardrobe before it kills you, check out radliving.com. This podcast is produced by Against the Tide Films because clearly we like swimming against the current of doom. Want to know more? Head to againstthetidelefilms.com. Make sure to tune in every 2 weeks for a new episode where we continue to unravel the glorious mess that is our world. Subscribe, rate us 5 stars, don't be stingy, and set a reminder so you don't miss out on the next existential crisis disguised as entertainment. Follow us on Instagram at @wefact_the podcast for updates, behind-the-scenes chaos, and questionable fashion advice. And hey, if you want to keep us caffeinated while we fight the good fight, you can buy us a coffee, so let's be real. Fund our therapy sessions at buymeacoffee.com/howwefact_the podcast. Oh, and did I mention How We Fact has a low carbon footprint that your latest Shane buy? Thank you for tuning in, Climate Warriors. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and remember, if your clothes aren't killing you yet, they're probably just waiting for the right moment. This is Lisa Camillo signing off. Take care, and remember, the future, preferably in something ethically made, is ours to shape.